Well, time for The View, looking at the latest opinions and talking points in today's newspapers and news websites. The Daily Telegraph cartoon has a family going round in circles over their summer holiday amid confusion from ministers about whether people will be able to get away this year. The Sun's editorial says, "Try freedom." The paper asks just how urgently the government is seeking to lift lockdown. Martin Kettle in The Guardian believes special advisers are just as influential as ministers. He says after lockdown, it'll be the books written by the assistants rather than the main players that will really give away the detail of what happened behind the scenes. Writing in The Telegraph, Alistair Heath says Labour's shameful lies about the NHS are silencing debate about its failings. He warns criticism should not be seen as an attack on doctors and nurses. This follows a row between various think tanks. There is no quick fix for Starmer. That's the view of their political columnist in the Financial Times, Robert Shrimsley, who writes a recent loss of form has left even the Labour leader's supporters questioning his abilities. David Aronovich in The Times talks about the romanticisation of parish councils following that video which went viral of Jackie Weaver putting her colleagues in place in Handforth and Greater Manchester. Mr Aronovich says once lockdown is over, communities will need to find new ways to tackle the problems of decision-making by committee. And speaking of viral videos, internet sensations, the Times cartoon plays on the story of the American lawyer who appeared in a court session with a cat filter on. This time, though, it's Donald Trump beaming into his impeachment hearing. Well, joining me today to look through those are the political editor of the Sunday Mirror, Nigel Nelson, and the deputy director of the independent think tank Bright Blue, Nikita Malik. Welcome to you both. Now, Nikita, summer holidays, some ministers saying go on holiday, others say not. Are they to blame, or do we just simply not know what the situation is going to be like in the summer?
Well, we know there's been a lot of confusion. There's been a lot of conflicting messages, and that has led to frustration, not just for summer holidays, but because we know so many people have family abroad who they haven't seen for a very long time, and they've been, booking tickets and having to cancel tickets. And then, of course, we have the added, jail term now of 10 years with the element of lying about it. So there has been a lot of confusion and lack of transparency around this. And I think that's where the core of the frustration lies and why the cartoon resonates with a lot of people in the paper.
What do you make, Nigel, of this campaign? You know, we're seeing it in The Sun, Try Freedom. Other newspapers have taken it up, basically saying, we got the vaccine now, it's time to start relaxing. And certainly a lot of Tory MPs are saying that as well.
Yeah, but we don't know how the vaccine is working yet. So until the vaccine kicks in, what experience has told us is that lockdowns are the only weapon in our armoury, that if you put restrictions on, infections go down. The moment you lift them, infections go up. So it seems to me that the cautious approach that Boris Johnson is at last adopting is by far the most sensible one. I, for instance, don't think schools should open until infections are below 100 per 100,000 people. They should be the first, but lockdown has got to be gradually lifted, not done all at once. And until we actually see where we are on the basis of that, of course we can't book summer holidays or do anything really.
Isn't this one area, Nikita, where, libertarians, people should make their own decisions instead of bleat at the government to tell them what to do?
Well, I think the pandemic in general has raised a lot of questions about our liberty and how much we're able to give up that liberty for safety and for health. And what I think we're finding with the third lockdown is while people are, of course, listening to the rules, there is this frustration about the lack of transparency as to when we're going to get out of this. And people are willing to do what's right, but there will be larger implications, say, if an inquiry happens. as to why the track and trace system didn't work, why there were certain areas that we could have improved. And I can feel the frustration, particularly amongst young people who want to do the right thing, but they just don't know when this is going to end. And that's precisely what the Sun calls for in this article. Is yes, they agree that this is the right thing to do, but when is the government going to give us an exit plan, whether that's to do with summer holidays or not, just so that we have something to look forward to in what seems to be a never-ending stop and start of lockdowns.
Well, I think the Prime Minister said the 22nd of February he's planning on doing it. Now, what about the NHS? Alistair Heath going on about shameful lies. This follows on criticism of a Conservative think tank which produced a report which contained the words, "There's nothing special about the NHS." What the author meant was that other health systems had responded equally well in Europe to the health crisis. Nigel, do you think Alistair Heath is right? I mean, is the NHS and criticising it really something that's taboo?
Well, it's certainly, as Alistair Heath says, it's a kind of heresy, isn't it? The British are very sentimental about the NHS, and any criticism of it just seems to be an absolute taboo. Yet we have to actually recognise that the 1948 model of healthcare, which, while it was our finest post-war achievement, really isn't sustainable in the 21st century. And both politicians, both on the Tory and Labour side, recognise this, but because of the sentimental approach of the British, they daren't actually say so publicly. So this is not criticising the wonderful people who keep the NHS going. It is actually looking at it as an institution. And what has happened is, as a result, every reform that's come up has been tinkering at the edges rather than having a proper fundamental root and branch overhaul. And we've got another reform coming. It looks promising, but again, it feels like just a bit of tinkering at the edges, where we really have to start thinking about what is going to be the long-term way of funding the NHS as we go through the 21st century.
What do you think, Nikita? I mean, is the NHS still too much of a sacred cow? I mean, after all, we have got, as Nigel says, fresh proposals being made today about making it work better. So it's not as if it's above criticism.
Yes, I think linking back to the article, and I absolutely agree, there is this kind of ring fencing around the NHS, and there's a conflation around criticism of how processes can be improved, whether that's as Alistair Heath writes, he says public-private partnerships that did so well with the vaccines would have been better as a norm rather than an exception. All of these criticisms, if one could call it that, or challenges, are to make our services better, and this is needed more than ever with the pandemic. But what we don't want is a conflation of criticism with a conflation of our doctors and nurses, as is written in this piece, which I found very interesting because, this is a time when we've been applauding and we need our doctors and nurses more than ever. But perhaps some of these changes would actually end up making practices and processes even better for them and would end up improving the systems that we rely on.
Nigel, I know you're a bit of a political anorak. David Aronovich says what he's most looking forward to from this period is the memoirs, not of the cabinet ministers and the Prime Minister, but of the backroom boys, people like Dominic Cummings. Whose memoirs are you looking forward to?
Well, I'd certainly like to see Dominic Cummings' memoirs. I don't like the bloke, but actually he did come up with probably one of the finest political slogans recently, which was "Take back control," which won Brexit. It summarised the whole sovereignty issue in 3 words. I mean, I think that SPADs, from my point of view, are always much better to talk to the ministers because you get far more out of them. So much so, I actually married one. So to actually get the memoirs of special advisors seems to be a good thing, and too few of them unfortunately write them. When politicians do, it tends to either confirm rows that Number 10 denied at the time, or alternatively become kind of self-serving self-justification for the mistakes they made.
Well, I should say there's a memoir just out by the widow of a former cabinet secretary. What does Jeremy think? So we're getting a little bit behind the scenes. Thank you both very much indeed.